Hey everyone, welcome back to Autoimmune Adventures. I'm Stacy, and today Becky and I are so glad that you're here because this conversation is one I think so many of you will deeply relate to. We're joined by Dayna Wylder, someone whose healing journey began the way many of ours did, with a diagnosis and a prognosis that felt heavy and limiting. For years, Dayna lived in a state of pushing through, suppressing emotions, disconnecting from her body, functioning from the neck up, as she says, which is something that I think we can all appreciate. But when her body finally demanded attention, she made a powerful decision. She wasn't going to accept fear as the final word. Her healing journey unfolded layer by layer, starting with physical practices like movement and breath work, then mindset and meditation, and exploring trauma and nervous system regulation, and eventually expanding into energy-based approaches that helped her feel integrated again. Today, Dayna helps others understand that healing isn't about fixing what's broken, it's about reconnecting to what has always been whole. Dayna, we're so grateful that you're here with us today.
You know what? Thanks for having me. And I really am so appreciative that there's people like you that are making a space like this. Because I know when I first got diagnosed, and for me, it was almost 20 years ago, it was very isolating. And it was very confusing, especially when you're trying to take an alternative path that not very many people support. And it's kind of paradoxical because although we feel, I think, isolated with our illnesses and our diagnosis, there is so many of us with it. So many people need to hear this message. And I think it's unfortunate, but it seems to be growing, the amount of autoimmunity and just disease in general.
We would agree with everything that you just said. And we understand the frustration that so many of the people in our audience and that we ourselves have all had, that we're not always getting answers, even when we're trying hard to find them. So, all right, let's start at the beginning. You were given an MS prognosis, and instead of collapsing into fear, something shifted in you. What was happening in that moment for you?
So my diagnosis is kind of a winding journey, as a lot of people are with MS, and I think probably autoimmunity in general, because it took a while to diagnose. So, I mean, I always had a nervous system problem since I was young. So I had fainting spells when I was a toddler, which is called, I want to say the name is vagobaglia syncopia, something like this, where every time I would have like a stressful event or I'd be fearful, I would pass out. And by the time I was at the hospital, I was still having to be revived. And I was always sensitive, a lot of infections, and you know what, the trauma started then too, though. So when I look back, our trauma started right then from those young ages and followed me all the way through. So by the time I was finally starting to Google myself symptoms and coming up with maybe it's MS, I had hit the pinnacle of my trauma. That was now living in a 15-year abusive marriage, and my son had just passed away. And so I was pregnant again, but I'm still grieving, and I'm now in a heightened dangerous situation because now he's also got a lot of stuff going on emotionally. And I started having symptoms first then, and it's such a weird thing to try to explain to somebody when I'm saying, well, I can feel my pants. And people are like, well, so what? That's not a big deal. I'm like, well, but when you know, normally you don't notice your clothes touching your body, all of a sudden that change in sensation is so noticeable. But I think every time I went to the doctor and I would try to explain or say to somebody, people were just writing me off and saying, you're probably just, depressed, you're probably grieving. It's nothing. Or maybe it's also because I'm pregnant again and they can't do any imaging or testing really anyway. So they just said, why don't you go on maternity early? Here's a note, just go home. Here's some antidepressants if you want them. And during that time, then I lost eyesight in one eye, and it started to recover a little bit while I was seeking, being in Canada, we have free medical care, but that means you wait a long time. Their services don't come quickly. So during that time, my eyesight recovered again. But again, I'm not really paying that much attention because now I have a baby and I also have C-section to recover from, and I'm still grieving and I'm being abused. I don't really have time to worry about myself and what's going on. So I just kind of pushed it all away again. And then the blindness comes back full force. Now it's black. I can't see anything. So now it's really scary because now I'm thinking, well, how am I going to take care of this baby? How am I going to survive all of this? I start Googling, which we probably should never do because, now I'm thinking I have a brain tumor, I have cancer, I have something crazy, and I'm waiting 18 months to get an MRI and to see a doctor. And by the time the diagnosis came, I was already pretty convinced it was MS because I had every classic symptom of MS. I'd already studied brain and behavior in university. I was quite familiar with how it presented. But it was a weird thing because everybody in my life is telling me, oh, you're just, this is stress response. You're probably blind because you just don't want to face what's going on in your life. Years later, I understand that there is an energetic component and I do understand stress is involved. But at the time, I found it really insulting and frustrating. And what a weird position to be in where I'm trying to prove that I have a disease. Because who actually wants the disease? But at the same time, nobody's taking me serious. Everybody is brushing me off. And to finally get that diagnosis was two things. One, it's validating because you're finally like, well, there it is. That's what's wrong. It's actually something. But now you have a diagnosis, and the prognosis with MS was not good, especially that long ago. I think it's getting a little better. They're more hopeful, but at that time, there wasn't really even any drug treatments that were effective. They told me just keep a job with benefits, hope that you have somebody that will take care of you, and you'll be in a wheelchair in 10 years. And I think that the only reason that that saved me in the moment is that I didn't believe it. I had already, during my own research, as much as I looked at all the negative things that could be, I also realized that there was some people that healed their lesions and some people that never got another attack. And in my mind, that was a potential for a cure. So even though my doctor laughed me off and said, no, it's not curable, it's progressive, it'll get worse. I never fully believed that. And I think that that helped me to, right from the beginning, to take responsibility for my own outcome and to seek alternative solutions.
I think that's great. And I think that's a story a lot of people can relate to. Maybe not obviously the exact things that happened to you, but a lot of similar things of being gaslit. And unfortunately, we find from a lot of our listeners and a lot of people on the boards that things like abuse, or even just whether it's we don't like the partner not understanding what the person's going through and not being sympathetic at all, to clear on the other side of the spectrum, the more severe side of the spectrum of actual abuse. All of those things I think can contribute to, like you said, the long-term impact on your health, and how that impacts you. And it's important to try and make a plan, because sometimes you can't get out right away, but to make a plan and to improve your life a little bit at a time so that you can begin to heal. In your case, you started with movement, breath work, and nutrition, things that some people try initially when they're figuring it out, but you said those things helped you, but only to a point. Why do you think so many of us hit a plateau even when we think we're doing everything right?
So the biochemistry, which is what we're talking about now, so that is movement, exercise, if we're doing physio, a diet program, and even those that are taking a pharmacological approach to it, still biochemistry, even supplements. So we're talking about all things that are being processed by chemical reaction in the body or mechanical movement. All of those things were beautiful and they helped me, and I still practice all of them, and I would still recommend to everybody because we still are living in a physical body. But the problem is we're not only a physical body. So then we have to go a step higher and we have to say, well, what is governing the physics of the body? And physics is the word even. So it is energy and it is physics. So when you get a little bit higher than that, you realize you need energy in the body to sustain. And for a lot of the people that have autoimmune disease, whether it even is chronic fatigue syndrome, lupus, MS, fatigue is a massive part of the disease process. And a lot of that is for so many reasons. And I think that the one that took me a while to understand is what causes our energy to leak. So even once I found tools that put energy back into my body, and the diet is doing that. If you eat a clean diet and you are exercising, that should, in essence, give you more energy. But for those of us where that is not working, when we ask a step higher and we look at it, from another perspective, energy leaks are going to come from a multitude of things. So they could be, again, still in the physical body. You have a virus, you have something, mold, fungus, something in your body where you're still trying to overcome it, heavy metal toxicity, right? There's glyphosate. So you're still at the chemical level. There's something that you need to detox out of the body, because right now your body can't worry about building an immune system or repairing if it's busy constantly battling this other thing going on. But then you go even above those things that are still in the body and think, well, where else can energy leak? And it's emotions, right? It's our thought patterns. So now there's another level above, because if you eat a clean diet, and I did On and off, I followed the diet only as needed, but I didn't respect the MS. The first 15 years, it kind of, I was still running and working, and I was doing relatively well. So I ate the diet sometimes, cheated when I felt like it. But 5 years ago, I had a massive relapse and it was all systems down. And this is when I really doubled down on the diet. And I was like, from this point on, it is either eat the pizza or be blind, or eat the piece of cake or be in a wheelchair. And so I followed it strictly, but I still didn't get all the way better. And I thought, okay, if you're eating this diet, and as I'm eating dinner, okay, I have organic food and pasture raised meat, and I'm not working now, so I have time to make this beautiful meal. But the whole time I'm eating it, I'm doing it with resentment. So I'm looking at my family and I'm thinking, why are you not supporting me? Why do you get to eat the chips? Why do I have to cook a second dinner because you guys, and blah, blah, blah. And one thing after another, complaining and pushing against it and being so angry that I'm following this diet. There is no way under that scenario that food is nourishing my body. Because as I'm sitting there, I am still in fight and flight. I'm still in resistance. So my body is not metabolizing the food and the emotions. Both things at the same time are not metabolizing. I'm not assimilating. And I'm certainly not in a digestive state where I'm still going to be able to get anything from the food and from the experience. And so this is where you have to start feeling in those energy leaks. How can I turn this into gratitude? How can I reframe this in a way that maintains the energy? And I would say exercise even is the same thing. If you're going to the gym out of obligation, or you're doing a physio routine, but you hate going there, it's not going to give you more energy. It's not going to help you. You're going to be resentful and hateful of the entire process. So it is about finding things, recipes you like, finding gratitude in it, finding a workout that is going to be something that brings you joy. Because I think we can all relate to the fact that if we spend a day upset and crying, what do you want to do after? You want to put a blanket over your head and lay down and have a nap. But think about, even if you're tired and it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you're out with your girlfriends and your favorite song comes on, and you start dancing again, like, you're energized instantly, and you don't care that it's 2 a.m. and you've been working since 6 o'clock the morning before. That favorite song is just gonna, energize your entire system. So thinking now about not just the chemistry in the body and all of these basic things, but how are you approaching them? What is your mindset? What is your emotion around it? And that matters immensely. And I think that people don't correlate those together that often.
I would agree that is definitely true. We have 6 tenets that we like to use: get good sleep, get good food, have a good attitude, all of these things. But one of them is joyful movement. We don't just believe in exercise. We believe it's important that there's joy associated with that movement, because then it becomes something you enjoy doing, and that feeds your soul and your mind and your body. And then you've got this beautiful cohesive experience where you're giving your body what it needs, and you're not hurting your nervous system simultaneously with your anger and frustration. So I love that so much. We talk a lot about stress here and flares in our community because a lot of people have those problems. Help us understand, since we've already talked a little bit about nervous system, help us understand in simple terms, how does the nervous system affect autoimmune symptoms?
Yeah. So when we start to have a stress response, and I like to back this up even more, and this is something that I use in neurolinguistic programming and hypnosis, which is, what are the actual belief structures that are underlying? And some of them are obvious and they're conscious, but a lot of them are ones we were given when we were children, when we're under, theta wave, and we're being kind of brainwashed still by our family and by society. So we're not always even aware of all those belief patterns. But whenever we have a belief, we now scan the environment for examples of that thing to prove it to ourselves. It's what we're paying attention to. I think it's called the reticulating activating circuit, where it's like that whole idea when you are buying a white Jeep, all of a sudden all you see is white Jeeps. So the same thing. So once you have a belief already, you always are looking to prove to yourself that that belief is true. So all of a sudden you could have any experience in your reality, and it's not the content, it's the context you give it. So the content can be the same for both of us, that we both had this moment happen to us. For you, it might be traumatic, and for me, it's not. And that's because of the context we give it. And the context is coming out of these beliefs we have. And once we give it context, that context turns into us thinking about it. And our thoughts are associated with feelings. And once we feel something, it now turns to biochemistry into the body. And once the biochemistry is now activated, and so now we have, cortisol, norepinephrine, we have adrenaline, or we have the wonderful ones on the other side. It could be dopamine, it could be serotonin. It depends what we're thinking about. It depends what our belief was around what happened to us. But generally, the stress response is going to put us into that sympathetic state. We're going to start to automatically breathe more shallow, breathe more rapidly. Our pulse, our heart rate increases. We get ready for fight or flight. And all of a sudden now we can't do higher ordered thinking. So we're not really ever, making better decisions and better actions now because we're all constantly in stress. And all of the things we talked about when we were talking about digestion and eating with, joy, the same thing, we've lost all of that ability. And so when you have an autoimmune disease and your body starts to attack itself, you have so many things you need to do. First of all, not just calming it, but you need to repair all the damage that's already been done. So if you're not building a healthy immune system, you're not modulating correctly, and you're not doing the repair process, then that stress is going to constantly put you in a fragile state, not only aggravate your disease, but prevent you from recovering from any damage that's already happened to you. So it really is fundamental to step all the way backwards and think about, like, how am I really seeing the world? What am I paying attention to? How am I giving meaning to it? And even the things that have happened to me in my past, how can I go back with my adult self now with all of these resources, self-love, compassion, things that maybe I didn't have when I was younger? How can I go back and reframe it and give it meaning so that the safety signals in my body start to change, and as opposed to me always feeling like hyper vigilant and that everything is on overwhelm. So even small little insults become like major trauma to us because we're sensitized to it. Can we back that up, reframe it? And, there's so many practices we can do, right? Like meditation, yoga, qigong, mindfulness, all the energy, sound healing. Like I have so many tools that you could offer to people. Really, again, though, finding one that you're going to, pick that you like, because you need to do it consistently.
You have given some pretty good ideas too about, obviously, like good things to do, and you've talked a little bit about how emotional suppression can show up physically with autoimmune diseases. So with all of those things, what would you say to somebody who is thinking, man, I've probably suppressed a lot emotionally? What is a gentle, safe first step for somebody in that situation?
Well, we're talking about just suppressing the emotions. I think that, first of all, I'm going to talk about emotions and the physical body in the same vein here, because when we think about our mind is speaking in language. It analyzes, it categorizes. Our body speaks in vibration, sensation, signals like that, and our emotions are coming from the body. So when we have an emotion that we've suppressed for a long time, it shows up as like an energetic oscillation in the body. So like, I believe our bodies are holographic in nature, and we have a blueprint that's governing the energy to do the biochemistry. And when we have suppressed emotions, that energy field gets blockages in the flow, or it gets stagnant areas or places where no energy is going. And when that happens, we end up turning that into a physical sensation in the body, because the body is now trying to communicate back up to the brain to say, hey, something is going on wrong, and I need to notify you of it. The problem in our quick fix society and giving our sovereignty and autonomy to other people is that we then say, oh, if I have a headache, I should just take an Advil or a Tylenol, instead of thinking, did I maybe not sleep well? Am I tension from something? Do I maybe need to have a nap? Right? Everything for us is just like, we'll just suppress it. We'll just ignore it. And eventually the body screams. And then when we think about autoimmunity, because I do believe that what's going on at the micro level is the same thing at the macro level. We have a world that is destroying itself and turning on itself. We're all fighting with each other. We're hyperpolarized politically. Our bodies are now turning on us too. We turn on ourselves because we speak negative to ourselves all the time, and we suppress the feelings and emotions. So our body stops trusting us because our mind is not intervening on the body's behalf. Our mind isn't taking a different action. It's not removing us from a situation. It's not changing direction when the body is trying to say, do something different. So eventually the body goes into like screaming now, because it's going to be like, no, I'm having a temper tantrum. I demand that you listen to me. And this is when now the feelings that we had, that we suppressed, turn into something physical in the body. And so my suggestion to people is, allow the discomfort. And I know that we all try to avoid discomfort as much as possible, but the truth is that life is beautiful and tragic. And you don't make it through life without having pain and suffering, right? But it is what you do with it that changes how the course of your life, turns out to be. So the next time that something comes up, even physical, whether it is pain in the body, whether it is a headache, whether it's migraine, for me, it's my vision and balance is what manifests for me when things get out of alignment. When that happens to me now, instead of instantly trying to suppress the symptom, I sit down with myself and I think, okay, what is it trying to tell me today? Maybe I'm taking on somebody's drama that's not my own. Maybe I said yes when I should have said no. Maybe I didn't, I should have followed the diet or did my workout yesterday and I didn't do it. Maybe it's trying to say something. And what is behind that? Because a lot of times our symptoms actually mirror energetically what our emotions are. So with MS, I think a lot about the fact that it's a disconnection between your mind and your body. Well, it makes sense to me that in my life, it wasn't safe to be in my body. Now, whether that was being, harmed as a child, or whether that was being abused, or whether it was my son, not all the pregnancies I had were very traumatic. I tried to separate on purpose my mind and my body because I didn't want to be in it. Because you have to dissociate. You can't live in constant trauma and abuse and stay safe and present in it. So after a while, my body said, "Oh, you want to dissociate? Okay. Your wish is my command. I will dissociate. And from now on, you will not have communication, will be two separate things." And so now whenever I feel that coming, and even say it's my balance, and I'm like, okay, well, what would balance maybe energetically mean? Maybe I'm not sure where I'm stepping next in life. Maybe I'm not sure-footed. Maybe I feel like the carpet's going to get pulled out. What are things that even just mirror the emotion to the actual physical symptom of, I don't feel balanced right now. I don't feel safe to walk. I don't feel, so then you start to look now, well, what is this actual symptom trying to say? Where is it manifesting in the body too? Because they have mapped out where cancer, maybe a tumor show up, that there is an energetic personality or trauma that's associated with where the malignancy turns up. And so, I mean, that's a little bit outside of my wheelhouse, so I wouldn't answer specific questions to that, but that has been mapped and really understood that the symptoms actually matter. So people need to just be okay with the emotions and with the pain because it's communicating. And once it feels heard, like, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with emotional freedom technique, where you do like tapping as you talk to, you're acknowledging the symptom and you're saying, yes, I know you're here. Yes, I recognize you. You're going away. And it is this acknowledging, because a lot of times as soon as you acknowledge the pain or the symptom, it starts to go away because it's done its job of messaging to you what it wanted. So when you take the time to just be with it and be okay with it and let it move through you, and I would say then you build resiliency emotionally too. As we learn to just allow the emotions to come, they're just like thoughts. Not every emotion, every thought is true. It is okay to just have them and then just let them move through you, make space for them, and just don't attach to them. Because sometimes we're like really pissed off right now because somebody's in our space saying something. We don't necessarily hate this person. We don't need to express it. We don't need to do anything. We can just feel it, allow it to move through us, and then have a different emotion a couple minutes later. And there's no good ones or bad ones. We don't need to hide them and run away from them. They're just okay. They're part of who we are. It's part of how our body speaks to us. And we need to just get, more adept at reading them and understanding them, because I think that we've spent a lot of time as humans ignoring and avoiding. So we need to get literate in what our body is speaking and what emotions mean.
I completely agree that that many people who have autoimmune disease are illiterate about their body. And so we have to put ourselves into a place of understanding that there is a correlation between what our body is doing and the signals it's sending to us, and where we are in our minds, where we are in our spirits. All of these things are connected because we're a whole being, and there's more than just one layer to us. So when we begin to look at that, as you've mentioned, I think we begin to understand that the connections, there are a lot more connections going on than I think that people often acknowledge. So we've been exploring this idea of the body and its energy, and I want to keep this simple for our listeners. So when you say energy healing or frequency work, what does that actually mean in everyday language for our audience?
So I think the easiest way to understand it was Tesla even said to us, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So this is looking back and stepping back and saying that you're going to look at the body. It's a paradigm shift, that you have a body that is contained within the mind instead of a mind that's a byproduct of your body. So when you see that your consciousness is primary, and consciousness then is what's creating all of the rest of the reality, that means that you're all vibration. So everything right now, like when we are about to touch and we feel like that we're touching, we're not actually touching. It's a repulsion of the magnetic field of the electrons. And the tighter those electrons spin, the more solid it feels. So that's how one thing like a rock feels more solid than maybe our skin feels. But all of it is only a frequency. It is all just at the quantum level. It's all just vibration and excitement. And every one of those things has a frequency signature to it. So the cells of your body, your entire blueprint, a flower compared to a tree, everything vibrates at their own energy. So when we have a lot of dissonant frequencies, and that can be coming from our minds, from our emotions, from toxicity, from virus, from EMF, from Wi-Fi. It can come from so many different places. But when we have so many external frequencies that are out of balance and out of harmony, this is when now the body, its blueprint disintegrates and it can't work right anymore. And this is why you would get things like autoimmunity or malignancy, or you would get pain in the body because the frequency now is oscillating incorrectly. So when we think about energy medicine, what we're really thinking about is how do we get the energy to become coherent again? How do we get the energy to flow and to move and to speak in vibration and speak in harmony, speak in rhythm? And that comes in so many different things. So we can be looking now at like our circadian rhythm, following seasonal food. This can be, making sure you sleep at the right time, that you eat the right foods for your body at the right time. It can be movements like practices like yoga. Right? It can be meditation. It can be, I have a lot of frequency devices and external tools because we do live in a cool world where as much as there's frequencies that harm us, there's all these gadgets and things now that can help us and heal us. But really it is just about aligning the vibration and the energy again so that it's harmonious.
Well, and definitely, I think that rings true. I know you said that you do some sound therapy, and the idea of everything being frequencies, obviously, that makes sense that sound therapy would be effective. What are some good ways, good sounds, I guess, to help calm the body and help it feel safe again? Is that something you could share with our audience?
Yeah. So there's three when I think just right off the bat, if people are going from here and they're like going to go on YouTube and search things or look it up, if you want to actually do like cellular repair and you want to clear your heart space, 528 hertz is beautiful. So 528 hertz, I also find this is one when I teach sound bath classes. People, they have masks on and they have blankets. It's kind of cozy in the dark while we do sound healing. When I play that frequency, I always see the tears start to come or people sighing or letting something out. 432 is also a really beautiful frequency to listen to. And this one is more I think a little lower in the body, and it's more about balancing and grounding. Binaural beats is something that people can work on too, where it's like you're listening to two different frequencies, and it's not the frequencies themselves that matter, it's the space between them. So what is the difference between the two frequencies? And, but then you want to go even bigger than that, because this is now still external things that you're going to be playing a tuning fork, bowls, or you're listening to audio tracks. But there is such an easier way to get the frequencies right in the body. One is grounding, because the earth has its own magnetic field. So the Schumann frequency is created between our magnetic field and the ionosphere, like lightning. It creates the field in which we live in. So if you just go outside, and I know it's, the tree huggers from the 60s, but they were onto something. Go hug a tree, be in the frequency of the forest, put your feet in the sand. I know where I am in Canada, it's a little hard right now, but even going outside in nature and hearing the frequency of the birds singing helps you to sleep better, to hear water. All of those frequencies are things that and fire too is another one too, that when we listen to the crackling of the fire, our evolution is built on that being safety signals. And then the most beautiful one, and I love to give everybody, because even though I offer all these specialty tools in my practice and I love them and they work great, I think for most people, if you can do it free and easy and it's accessible, this is where we should all try to do it, because that way you can practice it daily at home, which is your own voice. So your own voice is the most powerful sound instrument you have. And that can be in a couple different ways. One is just through humming. And the humming is actually going to activate your vagus nerve and the enteric nervous system. So the vagus nerve is running from your brain stem and it goes down into the body, and it governs all of the autonomic systems that we think are normally out of our control: digestion, blood pressure, heart rate. But I would actually say that it's not as out of our control as they say it is, because if we think calming thoughts, if we're mindful, if we hum, if we do some of these practices, then you can actually affect that autonomic system. So this is what I'm suggesting when I tell people to always meditate and to do yoga or practices like this, is because you are giving communication into the body to slow down and to be more safe and secure. Another beautiful one to do is vowel toning or mantras. Now, this one is really beneficial because now you're not only getting the vibration, but in Sanskrit, all of the words are, they have a lot of like power, because I actually believe that words are very powerful. So when we use these words, you're getting now the intention and the meaning of the word as well. And then just taking that, not even just from a moment of mantra and the intention you're setting, but what about the words you just speak to other people and internally to yourself? Because that's really powerful as well too. Like, words hold a lot of weight, and not just the ones we, again, like speaking out loud to other people. Are they compassionate? Are they empathetic? Are they judgmental? Are they hateful? And what words are we speaking to ourselves? Because that is a neuroacoustic sound inside of our head. So when we hear that sound, that is then changing the frequency of our heartbeat. And I think that in bioenergetics, it changes the way we think about our heart. But when you're an embryo and you're developing and they are doing like sonograms of you as a baby, your circulation system is already moving before you have a heart. So it can't only be, your heart cannot only be a pump. It has to be something more. And when we think about, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with heart math or heart rate variability, where they're studying about different mindfulness practices and how it changes heart rate variability and how that translates to health and recovery later. But every time your heart beats, whatever liquid or whatever blood or lipids that is inside the heart chamber at the time, when the heart beats, it's imprinting what's called a phonon. So a photon is the smallest package of light information. A phonon is the smallest package of sound information. So when your heart beats, it is imprinting all the things that are inside of the heart at that moment with a frequency. And it's information. And so then as your heart pumps that around all the organs and all the tissues, the muscles in your body, it is giving a signal and a message to everything in the body. And in Chinese medicine, we think of all of our organs and meridian as having a yin and a yang. The yin organ is solid and the yang has empty tubular spaces in it. So when you have that message and it's imprinting, it goes through to the yang organ, and all those little hollow spaces, the phonons store there. So even when you think about a musical instrument, and the piano, a drum, a guitar has hollow spaces. So as you're playing the instrument, it's the hollow space is resonating and amplifying the sound. Your body is the same kind of a sound instrument. So as your heart is beating and the phonons are getting imprinted, and then they go and they store in your organs, that is information that later is being communicated. So this is where our mind is so powerful, because your mind is connected to the heart. So if your mind is always chaotic, it's in fight or flight, it's, scanning for danger, and it's always angry or resentful, well, what kind of frequency are you imprinting that's communicating to everything else in the body? And this is why practices that are so simple, like gratitude and meditation, are so profound. Because as you practice those, the heart and the head get coherence. And then the imprinted melody of your own song you sing to yourself is going to be one of joy, of healing, of light, of love. And that's the chemistry that's going to be now in the body. And that's the one I want to live in. And I know it's hard sometimes, but we catch ourselves. This is why it's a practice. And over time, we try to notice when we start to go down negative thinking again or ruminating. And, we can't be positive all the time, but we try as best we can to bring ourselves back into coherence.
Yeah. Well, I find the whole sound therapy thing, I love your take on it, and I found it fascinating. We had earlier in our season, we had Helen Shepard, who specializes in sound therapy, do an episode with us, and she talked a lot about what you were saying about how our own voice is the most powerful instrument. Because I think a lot of people don't think about that. I mean, I even know people that when they hear their own voice recorded back, oh, I don't like my voice, or whatever. But it is really awesome to think that that is the most powerful tool we can use to help us with healing. So thank you for sharing that. As we're getting ready to wrap up here, for those that have felt that this discussion has resonated with them and they want to learn more with you, what are the best ways that they can connect with you?
Yeah, so I have a free healing circle that is on the second Wednesday of every month. And this is free because even though I like to do sessions in person, and I see people privately in my own clinic, and then I hold group sound bath, I like the free healing circle because I remember when I was really ill in the beginning, that the idea of like trying to ask somebody to drive me because I couldn't drive myself, or going to a place and being like, oh, do they have stairs? Can I get up? Am I going to be able to keep up? And it causes anxiety almost to have to go out and to navigate the outside world. So I have it just online because I want everybody to have access to it and make it free, because I know a lot of the people I see are also on disability, and their life has really hit them hard in other ways. And so the whole purpose of this for me is to make this message as wide to as many people as possible. So on my website, which is energyovermatter.com, there's all kinds of links you'll find there to join the free healing circle. And then if anyone is local to me or wants to book private sessions, which I do remote or in person, they can find that there. And I've also just released a book this Christmas. And the companion workbook just came out. I think it's actually yesterday. It finally went through Amazon. But you can find both of those Amazon in every country. And the book is called Unlearn Dis-ease, Relearn Wellbeing.
Absolutely love that. Thank you very much. We'll have all of those links in our show notes for our listeners. So for those of you listening, be sure to check those out. And as always, we want to leave you with this. You are worthy of joy. Disease does not define your life. You do.